Well, welcome to the panic room, where I guess that there's one area for panic that a lot of people have, and that is homeschooling that many of you are now involved in. Seems like a great opportunity, or is a total disaster? Steve, what do you think?
Well, the big question is, the last week, are we going to school or not after the Easter holidays? WA isn't going to school because we're still on holiday, but the big question has been, what's going to happen in term two? We've been told that COVID doesn't affect kids as much, but then they're saying there's teachers and there's parents around. You should keep your kids at home and do home online learning, or you should send them to school for herd immunity. That's the question. And I tell you, some people are getting pretty stressed by it. I've been homeschooling, well, online learning, and it did my head, I have to tell you, very hard. But this was a couple of comments in the app where people are writing in saying, it's a disaster. NBN failed and my daughter's doing year 11 and year 12 and things like that. So I'm not sure it's that good. What about you?
Well, I love the video of the Spanish lady going berserk after 2 days. It's just so emotional. It was so... I really, really feel for parents. I mean, in one sense, it's not homeschooling, because what's happening is lessons are being beamed into the school from teachers. So it's not homeschooling in the way that we understand it. I mean, I don't know about you, but there's an impression of homeschooling, particularly from a Christian perspective, that has this kind of a family that are out of Little House on the Prairie, or, you know, all with doilies on their heads and, you know, doing there is one God and two natures in Christ and three people in the Trinity and four Gospels, you know, and so on. And it's regarded as a bit eccentric and a bit weird, which I honestly think is unfair. I mean, I think there are good reasons for homeschooling. But, I mean, maybe... Were you homeschooled, Steve?
I was not homeschooled, though I look like I should be homeschooling, shouldn't I?
You do. You fit the image.
The Amish image. But look, a lot of people say, oh, homeschooling, it's for people who churn their own butter, wear double denim and ring handbells on Sunday. But I know a lot of homeschooling families which have a very good education and exceptional education. It takes a lot of energy, though, and as you're learning with the online learning, the amount of attention to give to one child is quite intense if you're not actually pedagogically trained to be to be doing that, I suppose.
Yeah, I reckon so. I mean, but there's another side to this as well. And I'm just curious, you know, imagine, you know, I'm a non-Christian, I'm watching this and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, Christianity and education, keep them apart, because Christianity is all about indoctrination and education is about facts. How would you respond to that?
Well, you'd have to say that historically the education system sprang out of a Christian framework, and even the idea of Sunday school, which was for those who kids who weren't involved in anything to do with education, was obviously a Christian thing. But the church started schools and the universities, science, and all these things that come out of a Western Christian framework. Education and Christianity go hand in hand, because we're people who are reading the book, the scriptures, to find the truth about God and Jesus in it. So you find where a country becomes Christianized, it becomes educated at a rapid rate. Can
I hands up, put my hand up? I'm so excited about this because I want to mention Scotland. We don't mention Scotland enough. Not enough. Yeah. And I think we need to mention Scotland a lot. But no, listen, here's the amazing thing. After the Reformation, John Knox said, where you have a church, there you have a school. And he built a Scottish education system in which the people became known as the land of the people of the book. Out of that came the Scottish Enlightenment and many, many other things. Now, here's the thing. As Scotland has rejected its Christian roots, guess what's happened? We've dumbed down, and now 1 in 5 Scots is functionally illiterate. And that is just astounding. And I think that's an example of what happens. I think you're quite right. I think Christianity does promote education. Because education is not really about indoctrination. I mean, you said this, the Sunday schools initially, certainly in 19th century working class areas, were to teach children to read and write who couldn't go to school. They weren't there actually to teach Bible doctrine.
No, that's true. And it's interesting that the indoctrination issue, as I watch my son learning, I go, I wonder if I took on more of a role of teaching him myself, where I just, he came alongside me and watched what I'm doing, whether he'd learn his grammar much better by getting involved in things he was interested in rather than just learning about it, whereas he was using it in practical ways. But the indoctrination thing struck me because there was a great article on a site called the Gospel Coalition by someone called Rory Shiner about he's in lockdown and he's got 4 sons who are quite exuberant. And they decided to watch together one of the movies from his youth, which did not age well. Poet Society. You may remember it.
Captain, my captain.
Captain, my captain. And this is, remember this scene where they're all doing their sport? Yeah. And there's the late, great Robin Williams, who was their teacher. And interesting thing about that movie, when I was young, I thought it was amazing. But Rory said it has not aged well. He talks about how with the start of the movie it's taking young unformed minds and telling them, just think for yourself, just do what you think you should do. And he said this in the article, he said, Keating, that's the teacher, says to the students in his class, you will learn to think for yourselves. Fair enough, good even, but wait. Keating declares this purpose to his students after having just insisted that the entire class rips the introductory essay out of their poetry textbooks. In other words, don't think for yourselves, do what I do. Yeah. So do you think that education has become indoctrination, David?
I think it's in danger of becoming that. I think it's too simplistic to say that it has become that. But I think as we move towards social engineering, as we move towards education being about preparing people for jobs rather than educating. So education in and of itself should be a good thing. And I think, in the Christian church, we absolutely advocate education. And I think, again, from the perspective of someone who's not a Christian, you have to understand that we are not about, this dumbed down Hicksville type thing that you talk about. And sometimes that's actually quite snobby because you also have a chronological snobbery. You think that 21st century people are smarter than the ancient Greeks or Hebrews or whatever. And that's not true. And I do think there's a kind of a holistic view to education. And maybe in this lockdown, we're going to learn something more about that instead of just handing kids over to school to be babysat.
Well, that's right. And this article goes on to say, education is for formation. It's about forming a person who can think, feel, act, and participate effectively and confidently in the world. Yeah. The aim is that they learn how to think, not what to think. Students should be on a track towards thinking for themselves, but that is the long game, a right that you earn at the end of a difficult journey, not at its beginning. And that's the issue, isn't it? That you train a mind.
It is. And, people like to learn in sound bites. And you and I, we would quite happily talk to people here for 2 hours and they would, obviously be enlightened and educated, but apparently we lived in a dumbed down society. So we have to go. That's our 10 minutes up. But we are here to educate and to be educated. All our lives we're learning. And that's an absolutely wonderful thing. I think one of the things that I learn the more as I go on is how little I know and how much there is to know. And it's a joyous world in that sense. And if we can communicate that to our children, be wonderful. Steve, I'm going to say goodbye. You can say adieu as well. Would you have anything further to add in terms of enlightenment?
Yes, the great text from the Old Testament in the book of Deuteronomy where God says to the people through Moses, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise." He's talking about education in a formation way, that even teaching about God is about forming the life of children over time on the road. And that's where education is about forming people. That's what I would say to finish.
Absolutely.
And hopefully you don't go crazy in the lockdown with your kids at home, people.
See you tomorrow.